Hey guys, Lucas from iExplore here. Tonight we're in Ginza and we're going to do some street photography with a telephoto lens. The reason for that is people have been asking about that. We've gotten a few comments requesting telephoto street photography, and also I was actually in this area a couple of, 2 weeks ago or so. Just happened to be doing telephoto street photography at that time, and I realized, hey, that would make a good video. So we're back here again. We're going to explore the area with my 70-200 Nikon Z6. But just before that, quick reminder, we do have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support us on there, at certain tiers you will get access to a map of Tokyo photo spots, and some of the spots we're going to explore tonight are actually featured on the map. Okay, so please check that out. That would be a great help for us. And yeah, let's get to it.
I explore.
Alright guys, so we took a little walk down the street and already I see something interesting that's conducive for some telephoto shots. But just before that, I want to mention a little bit about kind of my motivations for shooting telephoto, and I want to nip in the bud a common, idea, misconception, I don't know what to call it, but I want to talk about it because I know it's going to come up in the comments, and that is this idea that you're supposed to do street photography with like 35mm, maybe 50mm, and that's it. And this big, scary-looking camera with a 70-200 zoom lens, this is not okay for street photography because it's too heavy, too conspicuous, all this nonsense. And that, I just want to say, for me, is baloney. You don't need to listen to that. I think the gear that you use for street photography is irrelevant in terms of whether what you're shooting is street photography or not. I think the things that matter are the kind of fundamental characteristics of what I think is true photography. That is it candid, meaning it's unposed or unstaged, it's totally natural? Is it a mundane scene, it's just everyday life, and the act of photography makes it beautiful, rather than shooting something that's extraordinary on its own? And of course, the most important thing, they're all important, but is it a decisive moment? Is it a transient thing? If you can come back tomorrow and shoot the exact same thing, no change, that's cool, that's a photograph, it's not quite a street photograph. So I think those three things really sum it up for me: the transience, the decisive moment, the candidness, and the mundanity. It's just everyday, regular life. And typically it's going to be in a public place, of course. And the one more thing that I think is important for street photography is context. And that's where the telephoto discussion comes in, because when you're shooting telephoto, a common mistake is zooming in too much and getting rid of the context. So it becomes just a street portrait. It's just a person with a ton of bokeh. And that's not what I'm going to be going for. What I'm trying to do with my zoom lens, my telephoto lens, is I'm trying to get perspectives that I simply cannot do on 35mm. On, say, 35 or 50, or typically I shoot 40, I have to get rather close in order to make my subject rather, big in the frame. If I'm all the way across the street, that cool reflective background is going to be very small if I'm shooting on a wide-angle lens or relatively wide lens. But on a 200, I can get this perspective from this position and still make the subject big in the frame. And that's how I'm going to use my telephoto lens today. So, without further ado, from this position, I'm going to try to get some shots. Let's see here. Now, what caught my eye as well, I like this building. This is brand new. This wasn't here a couple months ago. But I like the way the light reflects on the cars. That's what really caught my eye. Because again, from this distance, the reflection is really cool. From up close, it would look a little bit different. Not necessarily bad, but different. So let's see here. Let's see what we can do. Now there's some people coming. Here we go. Ooh, yeah, nice. Hats. Gotta love hats. Very cool. Not too bad, not too bad. Let's keep moving. Okay. Now actually from here, it's getting a little more crowded. I'll put my mask on. Okay, there we go. It wasn't crowded before, so I thought, okay, social distancing. Anyway, you can really social distance with the telephoto lens, right? Keep your distance from your subjects. Now, one inspiration for this kind of shooting, although I wouldn't say it's how I started. I've been doing telephoto street on and off for years. But one photographer whose work I look to and then it gives me ideas and like, wow, this is what you can do, is Saul Leiter. Now, I just want to make a disclaimer so I don't get a bunch of comments on this. I'm not comparing what I'm doing right now to what Saul Leiter was doing. It's different. So don't say like, well, but actually, look, I get it. It's different stuff. But my point is that when you look at Saul Leiter's work, it's clear that he's using like slightly longer lenses, maybe 50 or more. And you can see that kind of more compressed sort of perspective in his work. All right, often there's some bokeh elements in the foreground, some foreground blur, splashes of color that makes his work more abstract. And I really like that. Okay, I'm going to try something like this over here because these two cars create a beautiful mosaic of light from that building reflecting on them. It's gorgeous. And I got the person in the car there. So there we go. That's this idea that you still want to get context because it's not just about, getting a portrait of a person, which is the common pitfall, I would say, of using a telephoto lens for street, is you tend to want to just get that portrait. You get that, full frame shot of that person doing whatever with the bokeh, the blurry background, and that's it. That's a photo. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm not going for that. I'm trying to get the person, but still get the environment around them. So again, I stress, like the third time I'm saying it now, but it's just about giving you a different perspective. That's what you want to do with a long lens like this. Okay, now you can see that I got one car and the next car and then the building. And if I had a wider lens, I could shoot it from this perspective. I could still stand in this position, which would give me the same perspective, but it just wouldn't look as impressive because it would be very small in the frame, right? So the only way that I can get the cars from this view lined up with the building like this is by standing here. And the only way I can make them then pretty big in the frame to fill the frame is by zooming in. And right now I was somewhere between 135 and 200, like 150 or something. So to me, whether you're using a wide-angle lens or a longer lens, it doesn't matter. The lens gives you the possibility of using certain perspectives. That's the point. It opens up perspectives. And if you don't have, like this goes from 70 to 100, obviously it closes off certain perspectives. With 70, there's no way that I can shoot something, from this distance. I mean, I could, but it'll just be a blurry mess and I will see just a little piece of it because the field of view is so narrow. So that's how I think about it. Okay. Okay. Something. Yeah, actually, I think this alley looks better in that direction because the light is just more interesting. And if we get a person walking through, that'll make for a nice photo here. Nice. So that's what I'm talking about. This guy's having a smoke back there, way at the end of the street. And we're able to squeeze him into this environment, compressing everything around him, and he becomes a little silhouette way at the end of the alley back there. Yeah. Very nice. I could mention at this point a little like a trick or tip for focusing. Of course, autofocus is really good in this camera for the most part. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's good. It's very good, and the tracking is good and all that. But in this case, it doesn't make sense like to try to focus the subject as they come. I kind of know where I want them. I know I want them down there at that distance. So what I might do, at least for the first photo, when somebody does show up, is I'm just going to pre-focus. I'm just going to focus down there on whatever's down there, so that like that piece of wall that's over there. And then when the subject comes, I'm just going to take the photo when they are at that distance. So I don't have to focus. It's kind of like a on-the-spot zone focus. I'm not using the gauge on the camera to get my zone, but I just focus where I needed it to be. Here we go. That's the beauty of using back button focus. The most important thing is the timing, right? So you don't have to spend any time on focusing. Like in this moment, or in this case, the subject is not exactly at the sweet spot very long necessarily, right? Because not only are they coming towards you, but they're moving side to side down the street because the street is not straight. So that perfect position might not last very long. So if I'm wasting time trying to focus, put the focus point on them, press the focus button, wait for the camera to focus, even if the camera does it extremely fast and accurate, it still takes more time than zero, which is the beauty of pre-focus. With pre-focus, once you set it up, it takes no more time after that. So I regularly use this, and it really makes sense with telephoto lenses as well, because at such distances, such long focal lengths, and I'm also on f2.8 because it's dark, so I need a lot of light. So my depth of field is very shallow. So actually that perfect sweet spot is not so big, so it just helps to pre-focus, decide where you want the subject in advance, and then you don't have to waste time doing that when the moment's happening, because the moment is often very short. That was cool. That was lucky. Some ladies in a kimono. Not the most exciting composition in the world. Very simplistic. But again, it demonstrates that using the telephoto, I can compress this whole alley into a narrow little frame. And it's out of focus, of course. The foreground of the alley is out of focus. It's blurry. But the elements are there, and they add this little bit of context to the scene, right? And if I did it wide from this position, if I had a 35, well, I would get this stuff right in front of me here. So the stuff in the foreground is not that interesting, and so it's good to cut it out by zooming in. Now, of course, if I had a wide angle lens, I could just get closer. That's true. But then what ends up happening is, as we get closer, you introduce more stuff in the foreground, and sometimes that's okay. Like here, it gets a little bit darker, so that's good, because I want the outside of the frame to be dark, and then the middle of the frame is where the subject is in this case. Pretty simple composition, subject sits in the middle. I know, not the most exciting composition, but nonetheless, the idea is I don't want the bright stuff on the outside because it draws the attention away from the subject. So in that case, I was able to get that distant perspective, but with the the distractions on the side cut out. Okay, let's keep going on the street or on the alley. Beautiful light in here. Love the subtle colors. Okay, so now that we're back on the other side, I want to shoot back down the street because I know there's a cool shot here using this reflective surface here or over there in the foreground. So I'm going to get really close to this. Okay. And using this marble material here, I was able to create a nice mirror reflection and still get that compressed effect. Alright guys, so that's about it for today. I hope I gave you some ideas for how to use your telephoto lens for street photography. Like I said, it's not about just, getting rid of everything and having only the subject. You still need some context, but certainly it is about giving you perspectives that you couldn't get otherwise with a different kind of lens. The basic kind of qualities of street photography still stand true. You want to get candid photos of mundane, everyday life scenes and public situations, and ideally decisive moments, because that's when a street photo really shines, is when the moment is extremely, transient and short-lived. All right, so again, hope you enjoyed the video. Of course, please follow us and subscribe and leave any comments with questions you might have. And of course, please, if you can, check us out on Patreon. That helps us out to continue to run this channel. So thanks for watching, and remember always, challenge your eye.